Chapter 7, Correspondence and the Firing Orders. Elements of each system of the natural being, mind, emotion, body. Functions of each element of the natural being, identity, communication, creation. Element and functions work within the same systems. Therefore, the element of mind works with the element of identity, and these function as one system. What we see and hear, sound and sight, what we think, and all other elements and functions pertaining to mind corresponds with our identity. The element of emotion works with the element of communication, and these function as one system. What we relate to, our actions, intuitions, and all other elements and functions pertaining to emotion corresponds with all our communication. The sense of touch and energy, the element of body works with the element of creation, and these function as one system. What we taste and smell and we believe about character and strategies and all other elements and functions pertaining to the body corresponds with all we create, the sense of taste and smell. Higher level abstract functions thinking for each of the senses. The human senses have their own functions, purpose, elements, structure, patterns, and processes. The nature of the human senses is the structure, patterns, and processes of our values, ethics, ideas, reasons, concepts, relationships, actions, intuitions, character, processes, strategies, and function as human beings. The senses of the way they work creates the program models of our whole being. These know their function. They know their development, their potential, the nature and purpose within the whole human being. Every human sense has its own purpose and has its own intelligence. It functions within the whole system even if the system resists its functioning. Every human sense can do all the other senses. They correspond with each other and they can fill in for each other. Every aspect of our entire being, as a whole being, is perfectly capable of maintaining itself as a whole system if we would just let it. The human system is not the problem. The problem lies within our human experience, beliefs, limitations, and sympathies. You cannot do what you do not believe you can do. You cannot be what you do not believe you can be. You are limitless in your created being. All of your abilities already exist within you. Know thyself, discern, perceive directly, and have a true understanding of one's own being. Heal thyself, make one's own being whole, and restore one's own being to health and original purity and integrity. Know and heal others, discern, perceive directly, and have a true understanding of another's true being, and make another's being whole and restore them to health and original purity and integrity. Unity, unifying aspects of naturally integrating systems, unifying aspects of naturally integrated systems, the totality of related parts that is a complex whole. Unity is a principle of the law of correspondence and applies when circumstances or experiences deviate from the whole system's purpose. This only happens when the system requires a change. The purpose and totality of the whole system has been since the system began, and by its nature continues to grow. When aspects or elements of the system appear different than the system has been, the deviating element must be brought into unity with the system's purpose without changing the deviating element. This is about whole system growth. Unity principle, quality or state of being made one, continuity without deviation or change as in the original purpose of actions. The physics of correspondence keeps the system progressing without change of original system purpose, while allowing each separate system and their functions, structures, patterns, and processes to unify within the system. Integrating systems and elements are interrelated and interdependent. Changing one element of an integrating system affects the rest of the system. The system, by its nature, will change based upon one element within the system changing. What we resist persists. Change cannot be resisted. Change will persist. Changing one part of a system changes all other parts. Shifting from one state of mind, emotion, behavior will require a whole system change while maintaining the whole system's original purpose and function. This is the process of a natural system, and human beings are a natural system, intended with a purpose since their individual origin. The human system is a whole system, so can unify parts that are very different. Whether the separate different parts of the human system are within the individual or become a part of the individual's environment, the parts are able to unify based upon the physics of correspondence. Correspondence, union of similar parts. When a whole system has similar parts or elements that must be unified into the whole system, these are more easily just added into the system. The similarities of the elements will more easily correspond with other elements. The key in keeping the system whole is maintaining the original purpose of the system. Each element maintains its individual function and identity while corresponding with all other elements. This will cause a natural process of whole system growth. All elements and aspects of any given system must be able and willing to correspond with all other elements of the same system for the system to be healthy. Correspondence among cells, atoms, organs, body systems, and senses are all crucial to being a healthy, successful human being. Unity, union of parts that are dissimilar elements within the human system, requires dealing with deviating elements. Take, for example, just thought that deviates from feeling, so an individual is feeling happy and joyful while the thought patterns are thinking of misery and loss. Take, for example, behaviors that bring negative self-degrading thoughts to an individual while the individual's feelings are grateful and happy to have the behaviors. You can think of many different ways of applying this principle of correspondence to being able to understand the power of having the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors corresponding with one original purpose. When deviating elements persist within a system, the system must focus again on the system's original purpose and multiply the original purpose or function into the deviating element. Multiplying the function or purpose into the deviating element within the system will help to change both the deviating element and the other elements within the system while still maintaining the system's purpose and function. Consciousness personality field, the sum total of all the movements that represent our internal processings. Movement has meaning, and the holographic human transformation theory map identifies the sensory movement, positions, and explains the sensory meanings, functions, and elements. Movement communicates the relationship between the functions and correspondence between the brain and the rest of the human body. The holographic human transformation map is an illustrated graph, a hologram of the meaning of body movement. Field, a realm of activity, region of space characterized by a physical property, like gravitational force, where every point of the region has a determinable effect or value. The holographic human map identifies the space of physical movement or activity based upon the senses and their functions and elements associated with the human senses. Every region of space within and around the conscious field has a sensory determinable value. Human consciousness is a field. As human beings, we are a whole living system, and our ability of consciousness is within the whole field surrounding our physical being. This is an actual ability and function to perceive, evaluate, judge, and decide, to have thought, and to observe through this entire field of consciousness. The field of consciousness is the space on which data coming into the system and communicating out of the whole system is drawn or projected into. As human beings, we are consciously aware of the field and the information which is communicated through this field of consciousness. This part of the conscious is referred to as the human mind. The body organ of human intelligence is referred to as the human brain. The human mind is a complex of elements in an individual that feels, perceives, thinks, and wills. The mind is conscious of events and capabilities and is an organized conscious and unconscious adaptive mental activity of the human brain. Mind field thinks, reasons, reflects, is logical, objective, forms hierarchies, and is the conscious center of identity, personality. Not only is there conscious thought in the brain, conscious thought and awareness of all around us in our field of consciousness. Living systems are open systems. Open systems take in feedback, data, and energy from the environment. This feedback from and back into the environment communicates through the conscious field. Modalities, channels to receive the input from the environment. Every organ, system, and aspects of our being is a modality for receiving information from the environment. 7 senses modalities of receiving and processing sound, sight, touch, energy, taste, smell, and self-time. 1. Receives data. Internal processing functions exchange and processes the information. The word data comes from the word datum and means something given. All the data received through our human senses is given to us for growth and knowledge. Data processing sequence. 1. Reception. Senses and other body systems are able and inclined to receive data from the environment. They are also open and responsive to impressions as well as data from the environment. 2. Processing internally. To integrate sensory and other data received so that an action or response is generated through a routine set of procedures. 3. Storage as models and memories. This might be referred to as a memory, program models where data is stored based upon similar and deviating data. 4. Transmission. Models and memories transmitted through language, behaviors, disease. This is the act in the process of transmitting information through space between transmitting and receiving the data from the environment through the system back out into the environment. This is the message throughout the system's conscious field, within the whole system, and back through the system's conscious field. Energy system currents of invisible energy flows through the body to revitalize and regenerate cells and body systems. These can be blocked by such things as anxiety, depression, anger, fears, and cravings. Blocking this energy flow affects the whole system. Personality, a pattern of collective character, behaviors, temporal, emotional, and mental traits. This is the basis of our personality just being a series of repeated patterns. Identity and personality are interrelated and interdependent. Changing one changes the other, creating a whole new collection of different feedback from the environment, and different internal responses is generally a lifelong pursuit. Reference modality, personality firing order. Holographic human transformation theory identifies the different sensory firing orders, and there is a universal sequence of modalities the senses have within the different sensory firing orders. Just based upon the sensory modalities, different personalities are created by the different sequence of sensory firings. This effect is also a major role in our personality and identity based upon different sensory blocks within the sensory firing order sequences. Universal sequences of firing order from first sense fired, there is a specific pattern of sense fired. Reference senses, first and fourth. Senses fired first and fourth in the firing sequence are reference sense. Reference is indicating the modality of greatest bearing on any subject or matter. These become the source of information, most often referred to in constituting a standard for measuring or constructing the whole of the program model. The functions and elements of the first and fourth sense fired become the expression of what is referred to in circumstances. Decision senses, second and fifth. Senses fired second and fifth in the firing sequence are decision senses. Decisions indicate the modality for the process of any determination arrived at even after consideration. These senses, with their functions and elements, determine our course of action we arrive at. These determine our purposefulness, firmness, resolve, and our presence of mind. Motivator senses, third and sixth. Senses fired third and sixth in the firing sequence are motivator senses. Motivators induce us to act or not to act upon something. These senses, with their functions and elements, are the incentive, incitement for us to be able to take action. Based upon the individual sensory firing orders, these patterns of first and fourth sense as reference senses, second and fifth sense as decision senses, and third and sixth sense as motivator senses, which play a major role in our personality and identity. We are a compilation of our program models from our environmental feedback with our internal responses and the firing order sequences, which is limited to the firing order model. Processing cycles overall firing patterns. Remember the totality of nature. It consists of 3 elements: first, structure; second, patterns; and third, processes. Everything in life has its own nature, and to have a nature and function, all things must have these three elements of a nature. Processes is the final element in the nature of the sensory firing sequences. First three senses fired are external reference and process. The way we process also the environments and are external. This is referred to as a worldview. Our worldview is determined based upon our sensory firing sequence. The various senses with their functions, data compression programs, and elements are the composite which forms our personal worldview. The worldview is the way we personally view the world, circumstances, events, and environment we live in. Last three senses fired are internal reference and processed. These are the senses we use to process self. This is referred to as self-view. Our self-view is determined based upon our sensory firing sequence. The various senses with their functions, data compression programs, and elements are the composite which forms our personal self-view. The self-view is the way we personally view ourselves, our circumstances, our events, and our internal environment.